Hey folks, and welcome to Typology, the show in which we explore the mystery of the human personality through the lens of the Enneagram. My name is Anthony Skinner. I'm the producer of the show. We're really happy that you've joined us today. We've got a great guest for you, Jenni Catron. She's a leadership coach, author, and speaker. She speaks at conferences and events nationwide, seeking to help leaders develop the clarity and confidence to lead well. As founder and CEO of the Foresight Group, she consults organizations on leadership, team culture, and organizational health. Jenni is the author of several books, including Clout, Discover and Unleash Your God-Given Influence, and the 4 Dimensions of Extraordinary Leadership. We have a great conversation with Jenni today, a really fun conversation, and she knows her Enneagram. So sit back, strap in, and get ready for a fun ride. And without any further ado, I'll introduce the host of our show now, Cron.
Jenni Catron, welcome to Typology.
Thanks for having me, Ian. I'm looking forward to this.
Well, I've been looking forward to it as well. I so enjoyed being on your podcast. I don't know how long ago was that now?
You know what? I think 4 weeks maybe, but yeah, our listeners loved hearing from you. So that was great. Thanks for being a part of that.
Oh, good. Continue. Just feel free to go on about how much you're
about how great it was. Yes, it was. It was fantastic.
That's good. I'm so glad. All right, let's just start out here. How did you learn about the Enneagram, and how has it affected you personally, not professionally, but personally?
Yeah. So I first was introduced to the Enneagram, and I'm guessing it was like 10 or 12 years ago, by my counselor. So I was at the time I was running, I was the executive director of a nonprofit, was growing really rapidly, was, just running, and was starting to really wrestle with, just my own sense of purpose, identity, etc. And so I found myself in a counselor's office for the first time in my life, and which was totally unnerving and just stretching me in all new ways. But she introduced me to the Enneagram. And so I had no experience with counseling. I hadn't been in any of those kind of environments. And so then a tool like Enneagram was just new and different. And so she introduced it to me. At the time, I was trying to share with everybody else what I was learning. And everybody was like, Ennea what? Because it didn't have the popularity that it does today. Right. But it was really pivotal for me in just really in my self-awareness. And of course, it had tons of application. You told me not to talk professionally. So personally, it was just a ton of awareness around what was driving me, what was motivating me, that quest for achievement and affirmation. It all started to make sense to me. And so that was my starting point. We actually spent probably a year with Enneagram in my counseling. I mean, there were some other things we talked about as well, but I think it took about 6 months before we settled on my type, and then really began to work with it to help me kind of understand, okay, what is this helping me know about myself?
All right. So you discover all this shadow material, right?
Yeah.
This quest for achievement, this need for approbation, etc. How did that make you feel?
Exposed, right? I think, so I really, and I still wrestle with this to a degree, is I wrestled with this, almost shame in that there was this dark side that I was unaware of. And that everything that I had done to find significance and worth and meaning as a human, was coming from a place that had some unhealthy parts to it at a minimum, maybe. And so I felt really exposed in that I wondered if everything that I have been doing because Enneagram 3, very much the achiever, it all started to feel a bit hollow. And so then I kind of went on what I feel like has been a little bit of a roller coaster ride over the years of finding a way to connect with those parts of my type as an Enneagram 3 in a healthy way. Okay, how do I how do I show up as a healthy achiever? How do I show up as a healthy, how do I find a healthy relationship with affirmation and approval? And so that has felt like a roller coaster, because for a bit, I felt like all of my achievement was bad, that driven part of me that wanted to accomplish so much. So I kind of did the pendulum swing of like, oh, that's all bad. All of that in me is so bad. And then there's been a lot over the last decade of trying to figure out, okay, how do I right size that? Where is that drivenness actually a gift to others, and when is it not? And I feel like I kind of go through that pendulum swing all the time.
Yeah, I think oftentimes when people are introduced to their type, they totalize the negative side, and without baking into their calculations, this is also quite beautiful.
Right.
You know, like when I am operating skillfully in my type, I bring a particular gift to the world that is absolutely necessary for the functioning of human community.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
When I'm over relying on it and I'm asleep to the unchallenged beliefs of my type governing my life from the shadows, I'm in big trouble. Right. I mean, that's when things go haywire, So, I'm curious, because we're in this COVID moment, right? And I've done a lot of podcasts recently on the Enneagram and stress. A lot of podcasts, people asking me on to talk about, how do different types react to quarantine or all that kind of stuff, even though we're kind of a little bit past that moment. You are a well-known coach, a leadership expert, someone who is in the business of helping leaders to thrive, and they're helping their teams to thrive and to flourish, which means that you, like me actually, have spent most of probably, I don't know how many years on stages, speaking, on airplanes, probably staying in nice hotels,
right.
Blah, 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 blah. You are a 3 on the Enneagram. That stuff is like methamphetamines to you.
Right.
And here you are, if you're like me, no one is sending me a private jet to come and speak at their place. So, I mean, are you suffering any kind of withdrawal as a 3 from the attention and the affirmation and the love of the crowd?
Yeah. Yes, and yes. But it snuck up on me a little bit. It was the, because of course I feel like I've done so much work to understand and be a healthy 3 and all these things. And then, we get a couple weeks into quarantine, and I, the first moment that it hit me was my last trip, and I was unpacking my suitcase, and it dawned on me, I don't know the next time I will pack this suitcase. And it was just kind of this symbolic moment of, okay, I'm noticing that there's a loss here. I'm grieving something here. So I start to even unpack that. But it really was the recognition that, and I have this, it works quite nicely for me, Enneagram 3 with a 4 wing, that I go speak on the stage, and then I come home and I have a couple days to be a recluse and do my writing and content development and re-engage and do all the creative side of my 4 wing, and then go back and be the hero and, the person who's helping solve all the problems with my clients. And as soon as that was gone, it really did strike me that I don't have a stage, right? I don't have people to dress up for. I don't have the, the praise and the accolades and the atta girls. And I'm sitting in my office in the same 4 walls. And fortunately, at least I get some Zoom interaction. And, but yeah, it has definitely been a bit of a, just a moment for me to process what does that look like when I don't have those typical outlets to perform and to be the achiever.
So, on one level, it makes sense that an achiever, and I have a very strong 3 wing. So I'm a 4 with a 3, you're a 3 with a 4. So actually, if we spent a lot of time together, it'd be very easy for us to be friends because of that three symbiosis happening,
Sure.
between us. And it makes sense to me at one level that it's okay to like to be in front of people. It's okay to want to be a great presenter, to want to inspire, to want to help,
Mm-hmm.
The other side of, and you should do it, right? You should never leave a stage thinking like, as that four-wing would be trying to do, saying to yourself, oh, that's just me being inauthentic and doing my shtick,
Right. Yeah.
my
Yes.
da. It's like, well, it's not that, it can be a very beautiful gift, this very charismatic, inspiring piece, right? We need that in our world. But as the Enneagram teaches us, these are compulsions, they're addictions.
Right. Yeah.
They're not just, habits. They have a compulsive, addictive quality to them.
Yeah.
So the threes need for attention, for messaging, the appearance of success.
Right.
The need to win the admiration, not so much the approval, although that's a piece of it, but the admiration.
That's key. Yeah.
Of other people. I mean, that's the dark side, right? That's the addiction side. And it sounds like you were just having normal withdrawal from.
I really was, and even still feel it to a degree. And one of the things I've noticed, when I'm noticing that shadow showing up a little more, is kind of a fixation on I can't quite do enough.
Right.
So I'll just do. And here, there's a whole lot about this pandemic and quarantine that have been really hard on a lot of people, but there's been some beauty in the fact that in some ways it's slowed us down. It's made us more aware and attentive to some of the more simpler things of life. And so here I've had these opportunities to be more present to my family, enjoy the garden and my yard and things that I rarely have time for. And yet I'll feel this internal battle of having that space, and I feel guilty for not being over here accomplishing things and achieving all these things that feel more significant to me in some ways. And I will really notice that difficulty to be present, even though I have more time to be present.
Yes. I hear you on that. That my little three-wing has that feeling all the time, So I'm going to read you a list of qualities of threes. And as I do, I'd like you to tell me which ones or which one really stands up and sort of sparkles for you. Like, oh yeah, that's mine. You know what I mean? Like that,
okay.
That really shimmers. Okay. So number one is constructing and maintaining a specific image to impress others.
Okay.
Doing without stopping in order to avoid feeling.
Okay.
Another one would be, let me see, the avoiding failure at all costs.
Probably more that one.
Okay. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think it is. I think the second one, to avoid feeling, I think that was true earlier in my journey. I can reflect back on, a 20-something version of myself, and I think that one felt a bit more true. But I am terrified of failure. I am and I'm honestly really wrestling with this, because now I run and lead my own business. You can't run and lead a business without like taking some risks and having some failures, right? And so there are times where I notice that I am so I'm so failure avoidant that I actually don't take some risks that would be really healthy for growth and development of my company. And so I'm noticing how it's actually hindering the development and growth of my team. I'm coaching other businesses and other leaders, and I can coach them to take risk all day long. And then I'm noticing I'm having difficulty doing it myself. And I really think it's that fear of failure. What will people think? Will they, will I lose all credibility because of a failure? I think that's like what is in me when I start to try to reflect on that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for being so vulnerable. I've been in a 12-step program. My audience knows this for a long time. And my sponsor just said to me the other day, what others think of you, Ian, isn't your business.
Oh, I need to put that somewhere like a plaster on my walls.
Wasn't that often?
Yes.
So threes out there.
Business.
Yeah. It's like what others think of you isn't any of your business.
Oh, I get so fixated on that, Ian. Like, so fixated on how will people perceive this? How, what will they think of this? One of the things I notice about just I have a very small platform relatively, right? But like I have some influence in the circles that I'm in. And I have this persona where I am kind of a friend to everybody. But in some ways that makes me very not distinct. Right? It's like, I think sometimes I try so hard to fit in everywhere that
right.
I lose some of the distinctiveness of who I am or even what I bring to the table. And that's something I'm just wrestling with right now. I don't feel like I've resolved that. I don't guess you don't resolve it necessarily.
Yeah, you can. I mean, I think what you're referring to here is the passion of the three, which is either deceit, and in some ways it's also called vanity. Mm-hmm. So it's deceit in the sense that, you're not consciously lying to people, but there's a part of you that is able to be friends with everybody because you can look in their eyes and read what they want you to be in order to win their admiration. Do you see what I'm saying? And
totally.
then shapeshift in order to become that person, and then suddenly you're friends, or yes, there other types don't have that particular ability, right? Yeah. So sometimes I think threes walk around with like a 3x5 card on their forehead that says, "How am I doing?"
Totally. Yes.
Do you like me yet?
Oh, I'm asking that question 100 times a day. How am I doing? What did they think of me? Like, yeah. How am I doing? What do they think? That is constant in here.
Yeah. And that's keep going.
Well, I was going to say to that point about the, the shape shifting and kind of reading on other personality assessments and things, I'll read very high intuitive, right? So I'm going to read the environment. I'm going to show up the way you need me to show up. And in some ways that serves me really well as a consultant and a coach, because I'm going to quickly read the environment. I'm going to quickly read the other person. I'm going to be able to meet them where they are. But then I'm trying to extract, okay, where is that authentic and where is that not? And in some ways it serves me well, but I would even love to hear from you, like, how do you do that in a healthy way so it's not experienced as manipulative or inauthentic? I think sometimes I worry that, do people experience me with the authenticity that I would ultimately hope that they see in me?
Yeah. Well, the Enneagram, and this is a word we don't use very often, we should use it more, is a discernment tool.
Oh, and I like that.
Yeah, I think it takes some time to discern things, you know what I'm saying? And so, we're always, like, self is not a noun, it's a verb. You're always selfing. So at any given moment, you may be going in a conversation from authentic to inauthentic but you know what I'm saying? Like it's not like I'm authentic, all the time, it's like, right. Nah, that would be really great, but I don't think anybody is. And so you're probably moving around like the rest of us do. I think so much of life is about what is your intention. Jenni, have you ever read, I'm sure you have, Parker Palmer?
Yes.
Okay. What was a little famous book of his?
I'll let your life speak.
Let Your Life Speak. I used to tell people all the time that if you see a copy of Let Your Life Speak on someone's desk, they're going to be gone in 2 weeks.
Oh no.
Yeah, that usually means that they're thinking about finding another job, you know, like
Great. Yes.
you know. But I love Parker Palmer, and Parker Palmer is a self-identified 3, which
I
you would,
didn't know that. Yeah.
yeah, and which is fascinating, right? Because you wouldn't think he is. He has struggled greatly his whole life with depression, which I think probably gives him a 4-ish kind of quality, but he is a 3. And listen to this quote of his and see if it sort of helps answer the question that you just posed. He says, our deepest calling is to grow into our own authentic selfhood, whether or not it conforms to some image of who we ought to be.
Oh.
As we do so, we will not only find the joy that every human being seeks, we will also find our path of authentic service in the world.
Wow.
Isn't that?
Yeah. Authentic service in the world. That resonates.
Yeah, I think this is the journey for every 3. That pretty much captures it. And I like that it was written by a 3. You know, one of the things that we haven't spent a lot of time talking, I wasn't able to in the road back to you because of, we were trying to write a primer, and so you were cutting things short, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So, well, we didn't get a chance to talk about passions very much. And some teachers call them fixations. But they're so important to understand, because every type engages in a behavior like called a passion or a deadly sin as a strategy to satisfy its needs and desires. Okay. And it's like an ever-present unconscious emotional force or compulsion that drives what your type does, right? And not to put too fine a point on it, but here's the deal. Your passion, my passion, is the greatest enemy of your spiritual and personal transformation. It is the lie of your type.
Okay.
So that vanity, that deceit at times, that inauthenticity,
Right.
it's with you. It's like it's been with you since you were a little bitty kid, because somewhere between wiring and your culture, your family, your coaches, your friends, all of them helped create this 3 pattern of behavior in you.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Until it reached the point that you could not live without the admiration and the behaviors that garnered it from others.
Right.
Served you great as a kid, it'll screw up your life as an adult. Right?
Yeah.
And that's what you want the Enneagram to do, is to help you to spot it. Now, mine is envy. Okay? As a 4. That's my passion. One of the ways I've learned when it's activated is somatically. It's in the body. I can actually tell you where envy, when I start to feel envy, I know it because I can feel it right there in my solar plexus. It's a feeling of kind of wistful longing. I'm comparing myself to other people. Oh, Mike Hyatt is so much more successful than I am. Or, so-and-so, gosh, I wish I had that quality of kindness that they had. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
That's a big feature of 4s, comparing themselves to other, envying material things, qualities in people, whatever it may be, and feeling like we don't deserve them, blah, 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 blah. So for you, I guess one of the ways that you can know when you are not in a good space is if you can find out where deceit or vanity lives in your body.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
And then be able to go, uh-oh.
There it is.
Or when a pattern of thought starts to run.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you're like, uh-oh, I know what that means. I am slipping into my false self right now. I am not my true self. I am slipping toward my false self. I need to pull back toward authenticity.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds all woo-woo,
No,
like
it makes sense.
somatics and stuff.
Yeah.
But where do you think, if you had to guess right now, you might be wrong, but give it a guess.
Uh-huh.
Where does your body, when does your body and where in your body do you feel like I am going to the wrong side of 3?
I mean, a couple things come to mind. There's a little bit of kind of the runaway dialogue in my head.
Yes.
Is one of the things that like I all of a sudden I'm trying to convince, I'm creating these internal arguments that are trying to convince somebody of maybe why what they experienced wasn't my intention, or if I'm anticipating an engagement that might have some conflict or something, and I'm working through everything. So there's a little bit of like that runaway dialogue where I just create the storylines before anything has even occurred.
Right.
The other thought I had is the almost in my shoulders, and the stress and the
Yes.
the anxiousness all sits there.
Yes. So let me just give you a couple of examples, and this is really important. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's not woo-woo. This is like evidence-based research is behind this. Okay.
Uh-huh.
I'll tell ones all the time. You're 3, but when I'm working with ones, I'll say, where do you feel it in your body when you know your passion of anger and resentment is rising to the surface? And invariably I hear from them, my jaw clenches.
Oh yeah.
And I feel it in my shoulders.
Uh-huh.
I just, I can, I'm angry, that whole thing. A
Sure.
2 will say to me, it's almost like there's some force in a moment when someone, I can feel that they need something. I want to meet that need as a helper. A 2.
Uh-huh.
It's like, I feel like I'm being pulled forward by something to say, how can I help you? It's like this, like I'm being pushed forward, like someone's got a rope in my chest and is pulling me forward. And I think with 3 sometimes, I think it's this kind of feeling of mania a little bit. I can't stop moving. I can't stop doing. I can't stop.
It's funny as you were saying that, and I'm having a little more time to process it. I'm thinking about, of course, these last few months where I have not had the same outlets for my typical achievement, and I can't get enough running, walking, biking. Like I feel like this, I got to move. I've got to somehow like release some of that energy in some way. Yeah. And some of it is just even work activity of, I will find so much more fulfillment if I sit here at my desk until 7 p.m., which is not healthy. But how quickly or how much more satisfying that will feel to me than, just going and engaging and doing some other things with family or friends. But that mania was a great word, because there is a little bit of like, I got to go do something. I gotta do something because I'm crazy.
Yeah, I gotta go achieve something. I gotta do something to check it off on the list, because for me, success equates with love.
Yeah.
Achievement, how much I get done, determines the degree to which I am worthy of love.
Yeah. And I'm earning it every day, it feels like.
Exactly. Right. All right. So you run the Foresight group.
Yeah.
Okay. And you work with leaders. You're a coach, and helping teams and leaders, as I said earlier, to thrive. I'm sure to work more efficiently.
Right.
You're working with cultures to detoxify cultures, or work like that. So I guess the question I have for you is, what numbers do you see in your coaching practice most often in your work? What Enneagram numbers?
Yeah. I see a lot of 3s. I think they quickly like rally to me, because we, share some of that, some of that approach to the world. A lot of 8s. I work with a lot of senior leaders, founding leaders, and I do a lot in the nonprofit space. So I'll see a lot of 8s, that have that deep justice side, and but that driven, make it happen, bulldog of a leader kind of personality.
You probably see a lot of reformer 1s too in that category.
That's yeah. Yep.
Who are very much concerned with issues of fairness and justice.
For sure.
Yeah, keep going. So 3s, 8s, maybe
3s,
1s.
8s, 1s, 7s. I see a lot of 7s. I'm thinking through some of the exec teams that I'm working with, and when I'm working with a team, I'll see a little bit better mix, especially if they're a healthier team. You'll start to see some of those other types. And that's usually when I get called in, because they start to, not that I don't do specific Enneagram coaching, but that's one of the tools I'll say, hey, if that's familiar to your culture, take the assessment, because it gives me insight into the different dynamics of the team. And a bigger team, I will often see a few different numbers at the table, and you'll see the conflicts between our 5s who are processing and doing, usually in they're often in the CFO or finance type of role. But then you've got the conflict sometimes between the high achievers who are driven and wanting to go, and your more, your types that are more attentive to detail and process, that then you start to see a little bit of push and pull between their types. So,
it's interesting what you were just saying. Earlier, you're talking about how much you fear failure, and that's something that's pretty terrifying, right? Failure, particularly public failure. People tend to think of 3s as, great entrepreneurs, and I'm like,
No, it's actually really hard.
It's really hard because there's too much exposure.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I don't know 3s who are entrepreneurs. I'm just saying that as a general rule, 3s follow 7s who started the company.
Yeah.
So a smart 7 hires at about the 5-year mark a 3 to run the company, and they'll either sell it at that point or allow the company to put them in a whole other sector to start a new division.
Right. Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So 3s make great CEOs, but not necessarily great entrepreneurs. And so I'm sure you've worked with companies where you have a 3 or a 7 who's holding on too long with founder syndrome.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. You're exactly right that you do those founding, and they're terrible. I mean, I love 7s, but they're not great leaders of larger teams and larger organizations, because of, they do need to start new things. They do need to have the freedom to move quickly and take the risks and do all of that. And typically when the organization gets to a level of maturity that requires more systems and process, they're going to hold it back. And I've really worked with some leaders where they're not ready to move on, and the dysfunction of their team kind of continues because that's just not their strength or their skill set.
Right. In fact, I have seen companies, and I would argue that Apple did this to Steve Jobs, who some Enneagram teachers think, they've got good reason to, was a 7.
Okay.
I would say he's a 7. But what will happen sometimes is this incredible visionary 7 comes into the equation, and they grow this gigantic thing. But they don't want to stop taking risk.
Right. Yes.
Well, but now you've got several thousand people working for you who are going, risk? Risk means I got a 401k here. I got kids at home. I don't want to take huge risks that could possibly sink the ship. And the 7's going, we got to keep going. And everyone else is going, we kind of like to keep things how, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, completely.
And then eventually what happens is the company spits them out like a cancer.
Yes. Yeah.
And breaks their hearts.
Yes. Yep.
But if the 7 had seen it 5 years earlier, it could have ended much better. You know what I mean? Yeah. They should have walked with the sale.
I was going to say, they should have moved on in their own timing, to really control that narrative a little bit more and not,
Yep.
and it is the, that dynamic of, there's a lot more at stake, and sometimes, those founding leaders won't have the perspective on how their type kind of creates the disruption to a much larger organization that is at a place of maturity where it needs a bit more stability, and helping them find their lane in that new era of leadership is important. So yeah, you're exactly right.
All right. So you got all these you're coaching all these threes.
Mm-hmm.
How do you convince a three that authenticity is what will help them most succeed?
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? In other words, like as a value, and then how do you get them to tell the difference between transparency and authenticity?
Oh,
Because transparency and authenticity are different creatures, right?
yeah.
But genuine, authentic selfhood, like how do you convince them that that's what they need to do?
Honestly, Ian, I feel like for most of the leaders I coach, they have to learn it the hard way.
Right.
And because then usually that's where they've kind of engaged with me is, and this was true of me, and a handful of years ago, that I think that that drivenness, that fear of failure, did not want to admit that something wasn't working in how I was leading, and wasn't open to the inviting feedback. Just this compulsion to kind of an arrogance to say, I'm going to figure it out myself. That ultimately leads you to a point where you do have a failure, you do mess something up, and then you've been humbled in that process a little bit, and then you're going, okay, wait, how do I lead better? How do I lead from a healthier place? So for a lot of the threes, they have hit some kind of, I call it like a crisis of purpose moment. Doesn't mean they've had some major failure, but they've had some kind of crisis that has caused them to recognize their mode of operation is not working. And if they don't change something, they're going to really have a failure of whether it's their business, their team, whatever. So they usually come to me when they've started to recognize this mode of operation isn't working. I have sometimes been invited in to coach threes because somebody else has recommended it, and I get a lot of resistance. Like if they haven't gotten there themselves, and I don't know if you've experienced
they think you're
this.
because they think you're going to talk about feelings and be woo-woo or therapeutic. I mean, even you admitted you didn't really want to see a therapist because, then you'd have to talk about feelings, which is not really in your wheelhouse.
No, not at all. Speaking of that therapist, they made me do a feelings journal as one of my exercises. And like my first handful of pages of my feelings journal was why feelings journal was a stupid thing. And so, it was not the most comfortable. And honestly, I went to a therapist because my boss made me.
Right. Right.
So, and I'm kind of embarrassed to say that at this point, but I'm so grateful that I had a leader who was conscious enough of the unhealthy place that I was in and pushed me to something that was uncomfortable for me because it made me better. And when I get those opportunities with some of the threes I coach, that is one of the places where I'm now willing to take the risk and push because I've experienced it. And I know ultimately that it's going to be good for them. But yes, they absolutely will push back on the, hey, what's I in a lot of the coaching that I do, I'll have people say, well, I expected that you would, make me build the strategic plan and you would have this, all the tactics and things. That's how you would coach me. And especially for threes, I'm coaching them on, doing some identity work, who they are, understanding their personality, understanding their wiring. And they're like, why does this matter to my work? And I'm like, it matters deeply because a healthy leader, a healthy team, a healthy organization cannot exist without a healthy leader. And, but it takes a lot of work to get people to that place of recognition that that's the work they need to do.
I agree 100%. Most threes, 7s, and 8s, actually. You know, like, okay, so if I'm in a room with, I don't want to say this too hard because it's not hard and fast, but let's say I've got a room of 30-year-olds, 25, 30-year-olds, and they're all all the 3, 7s, and 8s in the room are thinking, why do I want to change? I mean, yeah, I agree with you, but it's working for me.
Right.
I'm crushing it. I'm making $1 million a year. I'm 28 years old.
Yeah.
Or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that. Why do I need to change anything?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really become of interest to a 3, 7, or 8 to change and do the kind of work you're doing with them,
right,
until someone says you're going to get fired for being such a jerk.
There's a huge consequence to it. Yes.
Or they've been fired and they come looking for a personal coach, or their marriage has fallen apart because they didn't stop working, or some crash has woken them up.
Yeah.
Other numbers are much easier to work with than 3, 7s, and 8s in that regard.
I've created like the impossible work for myself, haven't I?
No, because I'm sure you have other kinds of leaders. I know lots of 1 leaders, and I know lots of 5. Geez, Bill Gates, a 5 leader. Have you watched the documentary?
I have not watched it yet. No, I've got it queued up. It's good.
Inside Bill's brain. Yeah, because what's so exciting about it to me is you see a 5 leader.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got to check it out.
And people stereotype only 3, 7s, and 8s can be leaders. It's like, oh, really?
Right.
Go look at this. Go watch this and see what a 5 leader looks like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's actually so well done. Okay, so we've got to come up on the end of our time, though I don't want to. But I have, because I have so many other questions for you. Can you tell me about a time in your life as a 3 when you experienced the kind of failure I just described, where you hit a wall where it was like, I either got to change this mode of operation, the lie, I have to either, expose and face the lie of my type,
right,
or I'm done for.
Yeah, so I probably can name 2 that were pretty pivotal. The first I was super young. I was about 23, and I was working at a record company in Nashville. And I'd been promoted to the head of the sales and marketing department, which was achieving all of my Enneagram 3 goals in life, because I'm, head of a department at 23 years old. And within a couple of weeks, it was not going well. Like I was frustrated. The team is frustrated. I go to my boss and I say to him, clearly this team can't cut it. We need to figure something out, because in order to accomplish all of, my goals, we've got to do something else. And he looked at me and he said, Jenni, if you want to work with widgets, go work in a factory. But if you want to work with people, you're going to have to learn how to love them, to lead them. And I would say that was a pretty pivotal moment. Yeah.
Hold on. You had a record executive actually say to you, if you want to lead people, you're going to have to love them?
Yes.
Anthony, did you hear that? How many record labels?
I know, right? Yeah.
I think he said leverage.
Right, yeah. He said leverage, not love. I heard that all wrong.
No, if you want to work with people, you're going to have to learn how to leverage them.
Yes. I did have a pretty unique experience and work experience. I had a great work environment there, so I was super fortunate.
That's good.
But you're right. Yeah. And it was not at all what I expected. Because again, I'm in a corporate environment. I am trying to achieve, and if I look back on that, I'm like 23-year-old, all the insecurities, all the fear of failure, is rising to the surface. And I frankly was just a bulldozer. I was just barking orders and trying to lead this thing that I had no business really leading or any experience leading. But that moment, I was on the brink of a failure, because I promise you that if I had continued on the trajectory I was on, I would have sabotaged that team and ultimately my seat in the organization. And that leaders coaching was and I really took it to heart. And then I began to just devour everything I could about leadership. That's really the conversation that triggered my passion for leadership development, because I realized I don't really understand what leadership means, right? Like I thought it was about being the boss. I thought it was about the hierarchy. I thought it was about just making sure things got done. And then I realized it was actually about, helping engage and inspire and draw out the gifts of individuals to help accomplish that goal. So I look at that as a really, really pivotal moment in my journey that defined for me, kind of redefined for me what leadership is. And so that was one. It wasn't a failure yet, but I was on the brink of one. And
it was a near miss. It was a near miss.
Yeah. And that was probably one of the most pivotal moments for me. But then fast forward probably another 10 years, and it was what found me in the counselor's office. And I can remember I was achieving everything externally and it looked amazing. But I remember emailing a couple of friends and saying, hey, would you pray for me? Because I feel like I've lost myself. Like everything externally looks great, but I am not fulfilled. I am not enjoying it. I feel like I am just running, accomplishing all these things. I'm getting all the accolades, all the affirmation that I thought I should get because I just signed my book deal. We were growing and hitting the fastest growing list I was leading a church at the time. We were hitting the fastest growing churches list and, all these things that were achievements in our sphere. And I was feeling really just empty and unfulfilled. And then that's where I learned about the Enneagram, which gave me just a huge tool to help me start to understand and make sense of some of that natural wiring of my type. So those are the two that come to mind.
I'm glad that you didn't have to go through a full-blown, smash up, which often happens when I've worked, because I do a lot of corporate consulting and also, in my therapy, I don't have a therapy practice now, but when I did, I mean, sometimes they have to go through a wood chipper, and they do. It's terrible to watch because threes have so much hidden shame that they're out of touch with at times. And when the failure is public and, the amount of shame that comes to the surface is intense, unless they have a high level of narcissism, in which case they'll blame somebody else. But usually, man, it's hard on them. So, all right, we're wrapping up, but I still have other questions. So I heard a quote the other day from a research psychologist, and it really, for all the obvious reasons, caught my attention. He said, all companies and teams have problems, and most of them are personality problems. Respond.
So one of the things I joke about is like, I actually just need a psychology degree for the work I do. My business degree and all of this has been helpful in helping coach leaders, but it really, the problems are people problems, right? Like when I get it, because companies or teams will reach out to me because they're not achieving an outcome that they are hoping for. And once you get into it, it's somewhere there's a leadership problem. Somewhere there is a personality, a team dynamic that is dysfunctional and it is inhibiting them from actually experiencing momentum towards their goals or what they're trying to accomplish. And so yes, I say healthy leader, healthy team. Maxwell says everything rises and falls on leadership. And so I'm a leadership junkie. So I do actually believe that it's really about the individuals and it's about the people. And the better a leader, the more attentive a leader is to their team and how to lead them effectively, the more effective their organization will be. But most senior leaders, a really specific example, Ian, is I will go work with a senior leader of an organization and I'll ask them, how much time do you spend with your direct reports? And they kind of fumble around for, an answer to that question. Well, we have a weekly meeting, but, we probably actually meet once a month, or, we have our executive team meeting once a month. And it tells me so much about the dynamics of that team, because I'm a deep believer in your one of your greatest responsibilities, if not the greatest responsibility, if you're in a leadership seat, is actually the development of your team. And you can't develop them if you don't know them. And knowing them means understanding their wiring and their gifting, understanding their Enneagram type. So that was a really long-winded answer to that question.
No, it was a great one. I use it when I give presentations when I'm starting with working with a team, because what I want them to know is, you're expecting me to come in here and sound like Jim Collins. You want me to come in here and talk to you about grit. You want me to come in here and talk to you about, strategic planning. This is not your problem.
Right.
Chances are you're really good at that stuff. The problem is that very few of you probably have anywhere near enough understanding of the inner workings of your heart and of your person. Mm-hmm. And that's what's standing in the way between you and thriving.
Yeah.
And if all of you can figure out how the rest of you see the world and and learn to appreciate difference and tap into your superpowers of all these different types, we're going to be okay, Yeah. All right, last question, dang it. I can
now we're getting into the stuff we both enjoy so much. So,
okay, my last question. Next week, I'm speaking. This is a very self-interested question, and it's also my 3-wing, dropping a name.
I like it.
I always sing my song, name drops keep falling on my head. So next week, I'm speaking at Dave Ramsey's EntreLeadership Summit.
Uh-huh.
And, that's all about, leaders, like leadership of companies, becoming healthy leaders and blah, blah, blah. What do you think I should say to leaders, a couple thousand of them, about the ways the Enneagram could help them in their businesses thrive? Or if you want to use the word self-awareness instead of Enneagram, that's fine. Right. But what should I say to these leaders?
Yeah. Well, I've heard you use this quote as well, that, self-awareness is the strongest predictor of success. And so I feel like that communicates to business leaders really well that and there's that study that supports it, that self-awareness is the greatest predictor of success. That usually gets the attention of business leaders when you're trying to make the case for, you got to do the self-leadership work. And then I would say that self-awareness for themselves and helping lead their teams to self-awareness, again, is, you were talking about this a minute ago, but when I'm coaching, we talk about culture has to precede strategy, right? Like, you can have the best strategies, you can have the best goals, but if your team isn't aligned and working effectively together, you cannot accomplish those strategies and those goals. And great team culture is built upon healthy, self-aware leaders. And so, for me, I use a lot of personal stories. You're going to have those stories and those examples to share, but to give them those examples of leaders who have done the self-awareness work, have led their teams to that. And then strategy becomes an overflow. Like, when we're aligned and working effectively together, we're going to accomplish the goal. That becomes the easy part, right? But it's getting that team aligned and everybody having a healthy understanding of one another and respecting the unique giftedness and individuality of each person on the team. I say that leadership is sacred work, that leadership is influence, and influence is the power to change or affect someone. And if leaders could really understand that some of their greatest influence is with the people that they're leading day to day, their staff, their executive teams, whatever, if they can understand that is their greatest point of leverage, going back to our leverage word, leverage and love can go hand in hand here, that's their greatest point of leverage, is unlocking the unique giftedness and individuality of each team member and getting them aligned towards the goal. They'll hit their business goals. They'll hit their strategies. Right. But it's got to be that comprehension and the understanding of that.
Well, Jenni, we got to go. And I'm sorry. We got to go. Let's have a non-podcast conversation one day about consulting the Enneagram and things we're learning because
that.
I love the work that I get to do that way, you know, and because it's really fun to see to get people past their cynicism about doing inner work.
Yes.
And having them realize that has been the problem. I'll close with one teeny story.
Okay.
I was working with a guy who was an 8, and the company was, he was head of a division of a Fortune 500 company. And I mean, he was an 8 like you have never met, okay? Like an 8. And at the end of it, he brings me into his office. I've spoken, this was after I had done some interviews with other members of his team, his executive team. And he says, all right, so what's the problem? And I paused for a moment. I went, you're a jerk. He said, what?
Awesome.
I said, well, I mean, if you want the short form of the report is you're a jerk. And he said, and he stopped for a minute and he goes, go on.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, just knowing that he was an 8, I knew I could get away with
He could
doing
handle
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he actually wanted as short an answer as that, you know?
Yeah.
And it was the truth. I had to tell him, you're a jerk.
Uh-huh.
And people don't like you. And here's why. And if you want this company to change, the key is don't be a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were able to start saying, well, what does not being a jerk look like? And what do I have to do in terms of inner work to move from being a jerk to somebody who is a thriving leader?
Yeah.
So this is,
it's so good. Yeah.
Love this conversation. Jenni Catron, Foresight. Tell us where everybody can hear about you. I know you're at Foresight, which is the letter 4.
Yes.
So the website is the4sight, SIGHT.com, right?
It's actually getforesight.com.
Dang it.
Because we couldn't get the. But yes, you're so close. It's getforesight.com with the number 4. Yeah.
It's better. It's better.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the website. And then I'm Jenni Catron on all social media. So it'd be fun to connect with folks there. So yeah, thank you, Ian.
Well, what a good time. Friends, my typology friends. Oh my gosh, time has flown by. I love you. My prayer is that you are experiencing the highest expression of yourself right in this moment. And remember the words of the great Oscar Wilde. Be yourself. Everybody else is already taken. Until next time.